السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله مرضاته وثوابه وقربه سبحانه وتعالى. Alhamdulillah, barakallahu feekum for all of you, to all of you for joining us tonight. So inshallah, there is an intention to, inshallah, hopefully try to sneak in this session before the Maghrib prayer. Hopefully, we'll try next week, inshallah, because I think next week Maghrib will be a bit later, right? Like, we'll be praying closer to 6 o'clock. So inshallah, next week, we'll try to insert the session before Maghrib, inshallah. What do you think? Ustad Ahmed? We'll finalize it, inshallah. We'll speak to the committee and we'll finalize that for you, inshallah. Okay. Barakallahu feekum. So inshallah, we'll continue from where we left off in Surah Al-Fajr, inshallah, alhamdulillah. So we said last week that Surah Al-Fajr is a Makkiyah surah, that it is a surah revealed in Mecca, and its verses are 30 verses. And the setup of the surah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beginning makes an oath by 4 different things. The Fajr, which can either refer to the prayer itself or the time. وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ, the 10 nights, and the scholars of Islam, they have different interpretations with regards to which 10 nights are we talking about. 10 nights in Ramadan, the 10 nights in the beginning of Muharram, the 10 nights in Dhul Hijjah. So a lot of different sayings. And then the 4th was Shafi'i wal Watr, by the even and the odd. And we said that there's 2 sayings for the scholars as well regarding this. Some scholars, they said that Shafi'i wal Watr is referring to the creations. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the creations in pairs. So you'll have the sun and the moon, the male and the female, the evil and the good, the dark and the light. And then we said other groups of scholars said that this verse actually means that وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ, that ash-shaf' is referring to the creation. That the creation are the ones that are in pairs. And there is no singularity in creation, if you think about it. Rather singularity and oneness, if you want, and the one without a partner is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one who is without a partner, tabaraka wa ta'ala. And then we said, وَلَيَالِ إِذَا يَسْرٍ, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَسْرٍ, the 4th one. So this is the night when it passes. And so these are the 4 oaths that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of in this surah in the beginning. And then there is the following verse, which is verse number 5, which says, قَالَ تَعَالَى هَلْ فِي ذَلِكَ قَسَمٌ لِذِي حِجْرٍ. And the meaning of that verse is that, is there not in all that an oath sufficient for one of perception? So in other words, in all these 4 oaths that were mentioned, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made mention of before this verse, is there not in it, in these oaths, perception for the one who reflects and contemplates on the power of Allah and His creating everything, tabarak wa ta'ala, by which he would understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of everything and He has power over everything. And the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed the previous nations, the disbelievers in the previous nations, and conquered them, tabarak wa ta'ala, He has the power also to conquer the disbelievers that came after them, who were weaker in strength to start off with, and they didn't have access to some of the things that the nations of past had access to, because of their size, for example. So the nation of Prophet Hud alayhi salam, they were very tall and strong. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the disbelievers of that nation, Allah conquered them and destroyed them. So it's a warning, specifically to the kuffar of Mecca, who disbelieved in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that look at what happened before you, look at the ruins that have passed. In that is an example for you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created those people in such a strong, with such strong bodies and such uh, abilities and capabilities that they were able to carve houses in mountains and build large buildings and so on. And Allah conquered the disbelievers of that nation. So you, mushrikun of Mecca, who came after, don't you think and reflect of those that passed, who disbelieved in Allah and what Allah did to them. The same way a punishment reached them for their disbelief and their lack of accepting the message of Prophet Muhammad, likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do the same to you. That's specific. And generally, and in a general sense, this is also a verse that anyone can reflect upon. And the disbelievers of this time can reflect on this verse as well. The people of sins, the major sins of this nation, may Allah forgive us all, the major sins of this nation, they can reflect on this as well. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has power over everything, Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And if we really think about it, that there's a much difference from our time and their time. But the one thing that remains the same is, and constant, is that Allah has power over everything. Regardless which time and era you're living in, Allah has power over everything. So it's a wake-up call. And then in the following verse, after this verse, هَلْ فِي ذَلِكَ قَسَمٌ لِذِي حِجْرٍ, is there not in all that an oath sufficient for one of perception? So the one who thinks and contemplates and looks at the example of those that passed, he will realize that the same way Allah conquered and had power over them, He has power over those that came after them and are much weaker in strength and so on. And so now the following verses, so we're talking about verse, let's see here, verse 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, up to verse 13. So we're looking at verse 6 to 13. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of those nations of past, those nations that came before, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conquered them and destroyed them for their disbelief. إِذَنْ قَالَ تَعَالَى أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْعِمَادِ. And so, do you not see, have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Ad? Don't you see what happened to Ad? And the kuffar of Quraysh, they came many generations after the people of Ad, the people of Hud, but they still had fresh knowledge of them. How so? Because the ruins were still existing at that time. Also, you had the scriptures that the Jews were very well, they knew their scriptures at that time, even though they tampered some of it. They would hear things from them about Ad and the people of Prophet Hud and so on, and how they were tall and whatnot, and their descriptions as well. So all of that was very well known to them, the kuffar of Mecca. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of things that's easy for them to grasp, is not that far away. And they can easily reflect on it because they have signs of the ruins that exist at that time, not too far away from them. And also, there is the mention of the Jews at that time who would talk about these things and have it in their scriptures. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made mention of it here in the Quran as well. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Ad? And so An-Nasafi says, أي ألم تعلم يا محمد علما يوازي العيان في الإيقان. Have you not heard, O Muhammad, or do you not see, O Muhammad, do you not know, O Muhammad, a knowledge that is like observation in terms of certainty? So they knew about these things. And so one interesting thing about this verse is that we have the word tara in it. Alam tara. In the language, tara is to see. But Prophet Muhammad didn't see the people of Ad at that time. But so what does it mean? It means to know. Just to know. In English we say, I see what you mean. I'm not really seeing anything. but I perceive what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Hmm? So the word tara here means to see, meaning to understand and to perceive. And so Allah Ta'ala قال ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد. And so there is discussion about Ad, the nation of Prophet Hud alayhi salam, and a lot of us probably have heard that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destroyed them with a punishment. In Surah Al-Haqqa has mentioned that Allah sent upon them a screaming and violent wind that separated their heads from their bodies. And so here is mentioned Iram. And Iram is the lineage is Ad ibn Aus ibn Iram ibn Sam ibn Nuh Ad. So he goes back to Sam, the son of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. إرم نعم اسم شمس هو اسم جده فوق على. وهناك, and they also say that this is so they say there's the Ad Ula, and because in Surah Al-Najm قال تعالى وأنك أهلك عادا الأولى, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed the first Ad. So the scholars have discussion, what does that mean, the first Ad? Is there another Ad? Or does it mean that these were the first people to receive a punishment from Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala after Prophet Nuh alayhi salam? So they have that discussion. And so the scholars are divided, that some say that Al-Ula in this verse means that they were the first to receive the punishment from after Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. And Al-Ula, other scholars said Al-Ula means that there's two Ads. It's Ad Al-Ula and Ad Al-Akhirah. That the first is the Prophet Hud alayhi salam, and the Akhirah is excuse me, another group that were destroyed by the wind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon them. Afwan, let me repeat that again. They said that the first Ula means that it's Ad ibn Iram, and the others said that the second Ad is referring to the nation of Prophet Hud, which was destroyed by a wind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, which is a very violent wind. So that's just going into some of the discussions that the scholars have about Ad itself. Is it one Ad or is it two Ad? And they have difference of opinion with regards to that. Now, so when we go to look into the description of the people of Ad, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them in a very distinct way, that they were very tall. They were like the height of Prophet Adam alayhi salam, and they were very strong. And with the strength that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them, they were able to carve houses in mountains and build a lot of pillars and buildings. And they were the ones who built many different cities at that time. But the downside to all of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them this strength and this ni'mah, this bounty, this endowment, but they were arrogant people. They saw themselves as people who had this strength and this power and this capability, and they forgot who gave it to them, who it came from. They forgot that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave it to them. Man ashaddu minna quwwah, they would say, who is stronger than us? And then Allah ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that reminds that He is the one who is stronger than them. Meaning that He's the one who has power over them, tabarak wa ta'ala. And so they were arrogant people, and they didn't recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave them the power and the capability to do all that they were able to do. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed those disbelievers of Qawmi Ad with the wind that He sent upon them, a violent, screaming, violent wind that separated their heads from their bodies. as mentioned in Surah Al-Haqqah. No. And so here it says, Iram Dhat al-Imad. And so the scholars, they differ as what that means. Is it a description for the qabila, for the tribe, Ad, or is it a description for the people themselves? So there's a difference of opinion, right? Because you can describe the people as being strong and tall, which they were, but also you can describe this verse, you can understand from it that the buildings and the pillars and the structures that they built were also tall. Irama ذات العماد, ذات العماد, يعني it's Iram known for its imad, for its structure, structure of their bodies or structure of the city. So scholars, another point of discussion for the scholars. Which one is meant here? And An-Nasafi mentions both. وَذَاتُ الْعِمَادِ إِذَا كَانَتْ صِفَةً لِلْقَبِيلَ فَالْمَعْنَى أَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا بَدَوِيِّينَ أَهْلَ عَمَدٍ, يعني people who were of a strong structure and a strong nature. أو طوال الأجسام على تشبيه قدودهم بالأعمدة, or that they were tall people but very strong bodies, because we said that they were able to carve houses out of mountains and so on. So you can't do that unless you have a very strong structured body, right? And so that's what they were. No. And then And then the following verse, قال تعالى التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد, and وثمود التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us more about Ad, that the likes of whom had never been created in the land. And so again, we could refer this back to their structure, their bodies, or we can also take it back to the city and the structures that they built, the actual buildings and so on. The meaning of the verse is the likes of whom had never been created in the land, or referring to the people or to the structures again. Because why? Because after Ad, you did not have people that tall. I don't know anyone who's as tall as they were today. Interestingly enough, actually, the other day I read like a news feed, an article of the tallest man in the world. You know which country that was? Apparently they said it was in, I believe it was in Ghana or Senegal. They measured him to be 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall, huh? But that's nowhere close to the height of the people of Ad. We're talking like much more. Much taller than that. So the height of such people, you don't find that today. So the likes of whom had never been created in the land. Allah Ta'ala did not create something like them after them. And also the structures that they were able to build and design, you won't find that kind of capability today. To a certain extent. And then the following verse, قال تعالى وَثَمُودَ الَّذِينَ جَابُوا الصَّخْرَ بِالْوَادِ, and with Thamud, who carved out the rocks in the valley. So the first people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded the disbelievers is the people of Iram, ذات العماد. The second is Thamud, وَثَمُودَ الَّذِينَ جَابُوا الصَّخْرَ بِالْوَادِ, and with Thamud, who carved out the rocks in the valley. They were also of a strong structure, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to make houses in mountains and carve out many different structures in the land as well. And that Nasbi says, أي مثل عاد في قوتهم وطول قامتهم, and so they were like Ad in their strength and in their height as well, in terms of how tall they were. So Ad and Thamud are very similar in terms of how tall they were, in terms of the capability and the capacity that they had to build very strong and tall structures. And then he says here, كان طول الرجل منهم 400 ذراع. So one of the men of them, his height was 400 ذراع. Inshallah, see if we can get the meter calculation for that for you, inshallah. So 400 ذراع. That's very tall. Uh, and another interpretation of the verse is أو لم يخلق مثل مدينة شداد في جميع بلاد الدنيا. Or the other interpretation is that there was nothing that was similar to the creation of the city of Shaddad in terms of the way it was designed. Maybe it's beneficial to mention this story here. They mention this in the books of scholars. وروي أنه كان لعاد ابنان شداد وشديد فملكا وقهرا. So it says here in the story he mentions that the Ad, he had two sons, Shaddad and Shadid. One was named Shaddad and the other name was Shadid. And they conquered. They were kings and they conquered the lands. ثم مات شديد وخلص الأمر لشداد. So Shadid, one of the sons, passed away and the affair was left to Shaddad. فملك الدنيا ودانت له ملوكها. And he conquered the earth and he conquered the earth. فسمع بذكر الجنة. Then he heard of Jannah. And actually in history, if you read history books, they say that there are only few who are able to actually conquer the world. And one of the people they mention is Shaddad, Fir'aun, Namrud. There's a fourth person I don't remember right now. They say there was 4 of them that were able to conquer the world. Take a water break. فسمع بذكر الجنة. So he heard about Jannah, this Shaddad. فقال أبني مثلها. He said, I'll build the likes of it. فبنى إرم في بعض صحاري عدن في 300 سنة. So they say in the story that he said, I'll build the likes of paradise. You heard about paradise. That we believe in, of course, paradise that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us about. And of course, the prophets of the past as well talked about it as well. فبنى إرم في بعض صحارى عدن في 300 سنة. So in one of the deserts of Aden, Yemen, he built it over a period of, says it, 300 years. And so he was actually one of the people that had a very long life. Which is not strange because you find people that do have long lives. Some that live a very long time. Even in the books of hadith, when they narrate hadith, some people that have a very short chain of narration. And one of the ways to explain that is because one of the people in that nation has a very long life. So a lot of people pass by him in terms of narrating hadith. وكان عمره 900 سنة. And they say that his age was 900 years. وهي مدينة عظيمة قصورها من الذهب والفضة. And it is a very big city, has castles made of gold and silver. And it's fitting that he did that because what we learn about the description of paradise that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us about is that you find that the bricks are alternating gold and silver in the homes of paradise. And so he wants to replicate that. He wants to replicate that. So he built the castles in alternating gold and silver. وأساطينها من الزبرجد والياقوت. And its pillars and structures were made out of zabarjad, I believe, is emerald, and yaqut is like pearls or rubies. وفيها أصناف الأشجار والأنهار. And in it you would have found many different trees and rivers. And then it says, وَلَمَّا تَمَّ بِنَاؤُهَا سَارَ إِلَيْهَا بِأَهْلِ مَمْلَكَتِهِ. And so when the building and the construction of that city was completed, which is the city that he wanted to build to replicate Jannah, paradise, he went there with an entourage of people, his men and escorts. So they went to the city. فلما كان منها على مسيرة يوم وليلة بعث الله عليهم صيحة من السماء فهلكوا. So when he was about 1 day and night distance away from the city, right? Because he had people build it, but he actually never went there himself. So when he was 1 day and night distance away from the city, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon them a loud scream from the sky by which He destroyed all of them. And so this is the story of Ad. No. And they do, I mean, no. This is the story of Ad. التي لم يخلق مثلها في البناء. The likes of which have not been created in the land. وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد. So we went over that. The Thamud who carved out the rocks in the valley. So Allah Ta'ala made mention of Ad and then Thamud to remind the disbelievers that these people were people of old of past who came before you. But look what their end result was, their end state, what happened to them at the end. Allah destroyed them because of their disbelief and their rejection to accept the message of the Prophet sent to them. So in other words, it's a warning to the kuffar, the disbelievers, be careful. The same way that Allah destroyed them, He can destroy you as well. So if you insist on your rejection, if you insist on your mockery and your insulting of the Prophet and not accepting the truth, and Allah can do this, then you might face the same fate as those that came before. But then now there's a third that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of to warn the disbelievers. وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ, the next verse. And with Pharaoh, owner of the stakes. وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ. And the tafsir is أي ذِي الْجُنُودِ الْكَثِيرَةِ, that he had a lot of army. He had a large army. And that's one of the interpretations of ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ. That Pharaoh had a very large army. Even if we look into the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, when Prophet Musa came to the river, what happened? With his staff, he hit the river area and 12 channels went up of water. And then the believers, they passed through the river. Between each channel, they were able to walk with their horses. And they say that it was such a manner that they could actually see who was beside them when they were crossing the river, or the sea or the ocean. But when Pharaoh came with his men, what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once they went in, Allah collapsed the water on top of them and destroyed them like that. So when he approached with his men at that time, it was a large army. For like above 1 million of people, above 1 million army men. So one of the interpretation of Dhil Awtad is that he had a very large army. Dhil Junud al-Kathira. وَكَانَتْ لَهُمْ مَضَارِبُ كَثِيرَةٌ يَضْرِبُونَهَا إِذَا نَزَلُوا. And also it said that they had methods of punishment that were very intense when they would punish the people. وقيل كان له أوتاد يعذب الناس بها كما فعل بآسيا. And so one of the meanings is that the Autad, he would use it to punish and torment and torture the people at that time. And he would connect them to like a stick or a peg with a rope, and then he would go opposite direction. Basically, he's like ripping the person apart, dislocating them. And they say that he did that with Asya, his wife, who is mentioned in the Quran. Let's see if I can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of her in Surah At-Tahrim. That she asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to build for her a house in paradise. And there's a narration from Abi Hurairah that Fir'aun, he punished his he punished Asya with this punishment, where he had autad, like we can call them stakes or like anchors or pillars that you put into the ground, and so uh, and then he put something on her chest, and then he had her connected to that, and so she was tortured, and basically she was killed in that manner. And in the narration, it mentions uh, that she looked up with her eyes to the sky, and then she said, "Rabbi ibni li indaka baytan." And this is the part of the verse that's mentioned in the Quran. "Rabbi ibni li indaka baytan fil jannah." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed her to actually see that house that she asked for in paradise. And this surah, this is mentioned in Surah Al-Tahrim. One, هكذا آخر آية صحيح؟ طيب أقول لكم الآن إن شاء الله حتى لا أخطئ. نعم. نعم في آخر قبل الأخير قال تعالى: وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله ونجني من القوم الظالمين. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a parable, an example, لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, for those who believe. Who? The wife of Fir'aun. Allah ta'ala mentions her in the Quran as an example for the believers. That she said, رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي عِنْدَكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. Oh Allah, build for me a house in paradise and save me from Fir'aun and his evil and the bad things that he does. وَنَجِّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ, and save me from the transgressors, those who do wrong and those who do evil. So this is an example of what Fir'aun did, and the Quran makes mention of it. Fir'aun dhil awtad. So this is the third person that Allah, or this is the third example, if you want, that Allah mentions to warn the disbelievers of the consequences of disbelieving and not accepting the truth. نعم. And then قال تعالى الذين طغوا في البلاد. الذين طغوا في البلاد. And then here the scholars also have another discussion here. الذين, is he referring to Fir'aun and what he did, or is he referring to all the three that were mentioned before? الذين طغوا في البلاد means all of whom, or of whom, oppressed within the lands. All of whom oppressed within the lands. So is it referring to Fir'aun, or is it referring to all the three? What seems to be the al-aqrab, as one of the mufassirun, the interpreter said, al-Razi, Fakhruddin al-Razi said, that is most likely referring to the three that were mentioned before, because all of them were oppressors. The disbelievers of Qawm Ad, the disbelievers of the people of Prophet Ad were oppressors. The disbelievers of the people of Thamud were oppressors. And also Fir'aun was an oppressor, very well-known oppressor in the Quran. There's not a story you'll find that's mentioned more often in the Quran than the story of Prophet Musa and Fir'aun. If there's a story in the Quran, or rivalry, or that's mentioned throughout the Quran, across the Quran, from the beginning until the end, is what happens between Prophet Musa and Fir'aun is mentioned throughout the Quran. So there's something in that story that there's something in that story that's like applicable at almost every time and age. So you'll find even in today's day and age that we live in, there are examples of Fir'aun. It's not Fir'aun himself, but there's things that symbolize Fir'aun, if you want. There's things and people and groups of people that symbolize Fir'aun. And there's things and groups of people that symbolize Musa, the good and the evil, the right and the wrong, the haqq and the batil. You find examples of that today. So it's a point of reflection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of the story of Prophet Musa and Prophet Musa and Fir'aun throughout the Quran, in many different places in the Quran, in many different ways. Something to reflect upon. Maybe we'll mention one more verse, and then we'll stop inshallah ta'ala. إذن وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد, all of whom oppressed within the lands, فأكثروا فيها الفساد, and increased therein the corruption. فأكثروا فيها الفساد بالكفر والقتل والظلم. So the tafsir is that they increased therein their corruption in terms of their disbelief, in terms of their killing, their rampant killing, and in terms of their wrongdoings and their evil and their transgression. It was rampant at that time. Then what happened to all of them? Allah Ta'ala tells us in the following verse, فَصَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّكَ سَوْطَ عَذَابٍ, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala poured upon them a scourge of punishment. And so if we look at what happened to Ad, what happened to Thamud, what happened to Fir'aun, we see that all of them were destroyed in different ways. Ad was destroyed by a screaming violent wind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon them, and despite their tall height, and despite their strength, and despite their numbers, Allah annihilated them and separated their heads from their bodies. Something to be warned about. And then Thamud, that came after them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon them a scream that separated, that teared their hearts apart, and their cities were lifted up and flipped upside down and came crashing to the ground, and they were annihilated, obliterated as well. Fir'aun destroyed as well, him and his army. We said in the story that he went into the ocean, the water collapsed upon him and his army men, and he died like that. And subhanAllah, he even at that very last moment, before he died, he said that, I believe in what Musa believes in. I believe in what Musa believes in, that there's only one God. But it's too late. Now you believe? Allah tells us in the Quran. Now, after all this time that passed, after all what you've heard from Musa alayhi salam, after all that was said and done, and after all what you said and done, now you want to believe. So then the Quran tells us that belief was not accepted from him. And the scholars take from this that if the soul reaches that point in the body of the person, when it's about to be pulled out, that he professes faith at that moment, he won't be accepted from him. So the scholars take an example of that because of what happened to Fir'aun, as mentioned in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala tells us. So Fir'aun was destroyed. And he was humiliated after that too. After all what he did, his body came up ashore. So that it can be confirmed to the people that this tyrant actually did die and was destroyed. So that the people can't say after that, oh, he got away or something. Allah Ta'ala made his body come up ashore so that it can be seen by the people that he actually was destroyed. Excuse me. He actually drowned in the water and was destroyed in that manner. فَصَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّكَ سَوْطَ عَذَابٍ, and your Lord poured upon them a scourge of punishment. Okay. And then we'll stop here. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَبِالْمِرْصَادِ, indeed your Lord is in observation, and indeed your Lord is aware. So we'll explain that one next time, inshallah, which will connect us, inshallah, to the next few verses that kind of talk about something different, but still is a form of warning and points of reflection, inshallah, for us. Are there any announcements that we can make today? So the first announcement is that AICP is helping with a new center purchase donation. So there's a center, based on what one of the brothers showed me, there's a center being purchased in Calgary. So please, if you are able to participate in donating for that cause, it's a sadaqah jariyah, inshallah. Allah will reward you for that, inshallah. You won't come out empty and you'll find it in your pan of rewards, inshallah, on the Day of Judgment, inshallah ta'ala. That's the first announcement. The second announcement is that we will have our Isra wal Mi'raj celebration on February 19th, Sunday, February 19th, inshallah, 2 weeks away. So keep that in mind and invite those that you know, inshallah, for this event. What's the fourth one, Al-Bas? It says also pray after a formal adhan.
Yeah, people are praying in different groups.
Uh-huh.
Or adhan was given.
Oh, okay.
The Asr prayer will only be held after the formal adhan.
Okay, okay. Okay, yes, so that's the announcement. So the fourth one is, inshallah, be attentive that in terms of congregation for the Asr prayer that will be held, will only be held after the adhan is made for the Asr prayer, inshallah, okay? So for those of you who want to pray in a congregation in this place, inshallah, please, if you can, wait for the Asr adhan to be made, and then you can pray in congregation, which is preferred and inshallah more rewardable than praying alone, inshallah ta'ala. So let's recite Al-Fatiha for Shifa, with the intention of Shifa, for our sister Humaira Muhammad, and our sister Amatullah Abdul Rahman, and our sister Fatima Zahra, and I'm not sure this is Zubadu, brother or sister, this one? Sister Zubadu Ahmed, inshallah. So let's recite Fatiha for that. Al-Fatiha. Say Tahleed 3 times, Salat al-Prophet 3 times. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وجزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد خيرا. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.